All right. Working on my Death Watch, guys. Any questions? Hit me up in the comments. This is a dragon named Steve. All right. I'm going to be working to try and finish my Death Watch guy. All right. So we're working on the Death Watch guy that my son, 7-year-old Jack, designed. Just laying out the pieces right now. Been trying something new with these pieces where I have been painting them separate. So we're getting near the actual time where we need to put them all together. Right now I'm just looking for last bits of detail on this guy. What needs to be done. I think he's pretty much done. So if you don't know, the Death Watch is a special branch of the Imperium of Man. They work for the Inquisition. I think they work for the so the Inquisition is broken into a bunch of different parts. One part hunts aliens only, one part hunts heretics, and one part hunts traitors. Something I forget. Or demons? Yeah, demon hunters. So they're demon hunters, traitors, and aliens. So the Inquisition contracts out to the Death Watch. So the Death Watch is a group of Space Marines, basically, and Space Marines are genetically engineered humans. They're taller, bigger, stronger, faster, smarter than all the other, normal humans. They have extra organs. Bop, 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 bop. They're 7 feet tall on average, and so they are basically the military, the main military, not the main military, but the specialized military wing of humanity. And they send their best and their brightest, kind of like Top Gun, the movie Top Gun. They send their Maverick to what's called the Death Watch, and the Death Watch is an organization that takes these Marines from different chapters and melds them into one unit. So Space Marine chapters are all painted a little bit differently. Actually, a lot differently. Space Marine chapters are all painted differently, and they all have different unique paint schemes. So, for example, I've got a couple of guys here. So this guy here is a Ultramarine, And so the Ultramarines are this kind of navy blue shade, or well, actually ultramarine blue. So you can kind of see him. And then another chapter I've got is, I should have prepared this a little better. Another chapter I have here are Space Wolves. So here's a swank old Space Wolf. And you'll notice the Space Wolves wear this kind of like storm gray, I think it's mostly referred to as kind of how they look. And you can tell, so they're very different. So they're both Space Marines, but their chapter iconography and their colors are very, very different. So Space Marines send all of their best and brightest, like over up to the Death Watch, and then the Death Watch, it works for the branch of the Inquisition that mainly hunts aliens. So, you know, for the broad strokes, painting pun, broad strokes, they primarily work for the Inquisition in this anti-alien kind of hunting group. So they trade in their armor, and it gets painted all black, and they have one silver arm with the with the Death Watch emblem blazed on their arm. So on their other arm, they usually have their original chapter marking. So each Marine has 2 giant shoulder pads, and on the left-hand shoulder pad is the Death Watch symbol, and on the right-hand shoulder pad is their chapter marking. So if this guy here in pieces belonged to the Ultramarines, his shoulder pad would be this blue Ultramarine shoulder pad. So I'm glad you're enjoying the history lesson. I'm sorry if it's boring. Anyway, so this guy particularly, so my son, who is 6 at the time, he just turned 7, but he was 6. He watches me paint models every now and then and does all this kind of hanging around while I'm doing this, and I tell him about all these things. He helped me design this guy specifically. He has a specific pose in mind. He kind of gave me the color scheme for his hood and stuff, and he found this shoulder pad in the Death Watch sprue that was chain covered and had this kind of badges on it, these markings. Usually they're Oath of the Moment markings or some other like award or honor that they tag onto their armor. Anyway, so this guy's shoulder pad's all black because he is a Black Shield. And what are the Black Shields, you might ask? Well, the Black Shields are Space Marines who have broken up and separated themselves from their parent legion. So this Johnny Ultramarines, like, I hate the Ultramarines for some whatever reason. They did something that he just didn't agree with deep down inside, and he's like, I'm done, but I still want to serve the Emperor of Man, and I still want to kill aliens, so I'm going to go join the Death Watch, but I'm going to carve off my Ultramarine symbol, this U upsilon thing, and I'm not going to refer to it, but I'll still be loyal to the Death Watch. So that's what this guy is. He's a Black Shield. He has no chapter legion. He, very mysterious. He has this hood. His face is all covered. So anyway, I've been working on this for a few hours, days leading up to this. So these are all the pieces that I'm kind of looking at. I painted a chainsword to go on his hip, or a really long bladed knife in a sweet leather sheath. Hopefully you can see it. To go on his hip, or this swank Mark III. So the armor that they wear, it's called power armor, and it comes in different versions, and they're marks. So Mark 1 through I think they're on 7 or 8 now. Anyway, I like the older versions because they kind of, this guy, it's hard to see, I think, for you guys, but it kind of looks like a knight's helmet. It's got like a grill. So this guy's got his hood out, so clearly his helmet, which would be part of his armor because they kind of wear their helmets all the time, would be somewhere on him. So I was thinking I would take this helmet and glue it on his hip if I don't put the sword on it. So pose wise, my son wanted this dude kind of stalking out of the shadows with his hood and his arms down, kind of like coming forward and being mysterious and grumpy. But he told me today of all days, that he wants to change the pose where he's looking up and aiming with one of his bolt guns and the other one's down and away. So maybe we'll do that. But anyway, before I put them together, I want to make sure there's no spots or anything I want to clean up before we're done. And I think he's pretty much all done, surprisingly, because I haven't been painting in a while. But there is a piece on his black backpack that I noticed. Nope. Shoulder pad. There it is. On his shoulder pad where I made a mistake with some cream, so we got to cover that up. So, all that to be said, all that history and nonsense, I'll keep blabbing away. And we're going to fix that bit real quick. And then move on to the other marine I'm working on. So if you want me to not paint this guy because it's super boring or talk about anything else, yo, it's the solid hair. Hey man, I'm painting and stuff, and it's live. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm just going to ramble on and totally just paint. So I've been playing 40K for so long. I started when I was in high school. I am not a super great painter. I don't pretend to be. I don't even play one on TV. I don't do this for a job or money or anything. I just do this as a hobby. So if you have any tips or suggestions that you want to throw into the conversation or questions, shoot them in and I'll try it out. But this guy is a lot further along than I thought he was. I also want to work on... So, my coworker has a 3D printer, and the blue guy and the red guy? Oh, the big pillar. I'll get to the big pillars. So the blue guy and the red guy. Do you mean these two guys? So those two guys, I was explaining before, they are different Space Marines from different chapters. So the Space Marines, oh man, it's hard to explain. Anyway, Space Marines are genetically modified humans, and the leader of humanity is called the Emperor. And when he set his sights on conquering Earth, he made some genetically engineered human soldiers called Thunder Warriors. And then he got a little better at genetic modification, through whatever means you want to claim. And he made armies, which he called legions, of Space Marines. And these guys represent two of those legions. Each legion had about 100,000 of these guys in it. And each legion got a Primarch, who was even bigger, badder, and stronger than Space Marines. So, there were 20 of those legions, and each of them were distinct and had, once they found their Primarch, that's another story, but they got unique kind of genetics modifications given to them, and mannerisms, and color coding. So this light blue guy, light gray guy over here with the claw and the helmet in his hand is a Space Wolf, which is the 6th Legion, and this Ultramarine blue guy is an Ultramarine. And they are the 13th Legion. Oh man, that's off the top of my head. If I'm wrong, I apologize. Aridin, is it the 13th? I hope so. Anyway, so that's what these two guys are, and I wanted to show them as an example of Space Marines, because Space Marines send representatives to the Death Watch, and I'm painting a Death Watch guy. Now, this big pillar, what is that? The big pillar is not a pillar at all. It's actually a assault craft, in a sense. It's called a drop pod, and when a Space Marine ship comes into high orbit, I agree, Space Wolves are the best, comes into high orbit and wants to, say, assault everyone on the planet and send troops as quickly as possible, they load up a bunch of guys into one of these things and they drop it like a little teardrop missile into civilization. It lands with a thud, and all of these flower petal doors open up like this, and it's super swank, and outpour angry Space Marines or robots or automated turrets or killing things of all stripes. So this drop pod is painted in the Space Wolf livery, and the reason it's here is because it was actually printed for me by my coworker, which I started to talk about before. My coworker, Francois, has a 3D printer, and we found this website that has fan-made 40K stuff, and this drop pod was on that site. So we got the file, and he printed it for me. I put it together and painted it, and here we go. I've got a fully operational drop pod from the internet. It's the craziest thing. We also found this cool file that was this statue of a space marine, and he printed one, and it was huge. It was, the size of something big, which I don't have, and it's a really cool terrain piece. And I painted it like a bronze statue, and it's a much bigger version of this. But he also printed this one because I think this was the original file size, just to see what it looked like. It actually is kind of the size of a chess piece now. But anyway, I've had this little one for a while, and I was thinking yes, I can hold them up in a second. I was thinking I would paint this kind of like a blue electric hologram thing, and then affix it into the center of the drop pod. If you can see that, kind of like it's their commanding officer giving them holographic orders. So I think that might look kind of cool. Anyway, here's the Space Wolf. Can you see him? Okay. Oh, the shadow kind of sucks. Oh, down here. I'm still new with the camera, so there you go. Lower, lower, closer, closer. Sorry if the camera sucks. Enhance, enhance. If this was CSI, you would see such a clear picture of this thing. Enhance. The closer I get, the more the contrast of the light kind of sucks. The Space Wolves are ridiculously cool. So they have all this badass, like they have like a kind of Viking Nordic theme going on, and they have wolf skulls and pelts and runes and tails and stuff on them. It is ridiculously cool. When I started playing 40K, I started playing the Blood Angels, and I did that primarily because I got the main set and they were all red, and I wasn't a very good painter. Not that I'm a much better painter now, but I wasn't a very good painter, so I thought, well, I could paint a bunch of red dudes. So I did. I went Blood Angels, and I didn't spend the time to like learn anything about them, or their like kitschy thing was they were like vampires, and they, in the early goings of 40K, I was like, oh, they're vampires. Okay, that makes sense. Like Space Wolves or werewolves. Anyway, so I started Blood Angels, and I played them for forever. But as I got more into 40K, into the history of it later in life, I made it kind of my hobby twist to paint characters and stuff from novels and other lore that I'd never really spent the time. So Ultramarines, I kind of always hated Ultramarines because they're kind of pushed out as these vanilla douches, forgive my language, but they're kind of pushed out as the like generic Space Marine, and I always kind of thought they were really boring. But then I read this awesome novel series about Ultramarines, and I really fell in love with them. So I painted a bunch of Ultramarines kind of based on the characters from the book. And then the more I read, and I've read so many novels set in this universe and so much fluff set in this universe, that I was like, oh, Space Wolves are so badass. And then they released the 8th version of the rules. Now I haven't updated my rules or played a different version of the game since the 2nd edition of the game, so it's been forever. So when I read the new stuff, I fell in love with Space Wolves. There's a new rule set, so long story short, I'm going to be making a Space Wolf army, so this guy was part of a squad. So let's paint this thing. Now I didn't prime it because I didn't prepare very well, and this is a weird kind of first for me with this live streaming stuff, so I'm gonna try and clean him off. This is an awesome print. Francois at work has gotten really good at printing stuff. He also printed this Terminator for me, and so they just need a little bit of cleaning up because they come on supports and stuff. But I'm gonna paint this guy without primer because why the hell not? I don't use airbrushes because I just don't. So let's go. Let's do it. I'm going to start with the darkest blue I have, which I think is royal blue. Here we go. Paint this guy in royal blue. Let him dry. The way I'm going to do it is because I want him to be kind of like a hologram electrical thing. I'm going to paint him dark blue and work my way up to white, basically. Layers and dry brushing. And hopefully it'll look like, you know, like Star Wars or any other thing where they project something like a hologram. And then I'll kind of place him in the middle of the drop pod. So this is going to be kind of boring, not so detail-y, but I wanted to be painting something because I feel like I've been talking for the entire time as opposed to paint it. So let's do it. Let's paint it live. I love it. We'll paint it live. I love it. Here we go. A lot of pressure. A lot of pressure. I feel like I'm at a golf tournament. And he's going up to the tee. Very good. Very good. He's ready to go. Yes, he's ready. I don't know why I'm British when I'm playing golf. But here we go. This paint is super old and a little chunky, so I'm going to add some water and kind of loosen it up to try and get as good a flow on it as I can. I'm sorry with I hold this stuff with my left hand, so I'm sorry if it's hard to see, but here we go. Just going to do dark blue all over this mother. I have a cup of coffee in an awesome mug, but I'm not drinking it because I'm painting. So, what other questions can I ask or answer? What can I ask? How's everybody doing? I know it's crazy that I right now have people from different parts of the country watching me paint live on the internet. That's the future. In 1993, when I started painting these using a toothpick and bottles of Testors paint, I never conceived that your friend in China can play the same game that you do. If I can quote the cable guy. If you don't know what I'm quoting, if a movie is too old and you've never heard of it, you should watch it, because I only watch awesome movies. Cable Guy's a great movie. Man, does it not get enough credit. It's like a hidden gem, like Mystery Men, another Ben Stiller vehicle that is just fantastic and seldom talked about. I mean, they both came out in the 90s when movies were kind of not great, but they were great movies. Yeah, the toothpicks. Brennan, man. I wish I don't think I do. I don't think I have any of my original Blood Angel like painted red guys where I like painted them with Testors red paint and toothpicks, and then I used Testors yellow paint to try and paint on freehand with a toothpick to the icon for the Blood Angels. And the Blood Angels icon is a blood drop in the middle of angel wings, and I was using yellow and I couldn't get any kind of detail at all, so I just kind of painted this like yellow blob in the middle with like little yellow fingers coming off. It kind of looked like a yellow hand, but a bad like nightmare yellow hand, or like a little kid's yellow hand. And I was like, yeah, that looks like a wing. Man, I think I'm gonna switch brushes because this guy's, even though he's small, he is deceptively big, and I do not want to ruin my super good detail brush. I want to move faster, so I'm gonna switch brushes real quick. I'm glad you guys like the Cable Guy because it is amazing. All right, here we go. Bigger brush time. It's gonna get a little sloppy. I am surprised that I'm sharing any of this stuff, but I guess I crave validation for the stuff I'm painting. But, you know, having made video games for a long time, which I did, and working with professional artists, or the three guys, including Aridin here, who grew up painting these and playing it with me, all of the guys I grew up playing with were like 100 times the painting skill that I had ever at any time. It was ridiculous, especially like Aridin, man. You're such a good painter, and I know you're getting back into it, and I'm so excited to see your stuff again. But I was never, ever good at this. And then I, made video games and worked with professional artists. I went to college and pretended to have a skill in art. And I almost got an art minor, but really, if you go to class and try and don't leave in tears when the real artists are drawing good stuff and critiquing your stuff, what is that supposed to be? You pass those classes and they'll give a minor to anybody, but I work with professional artists and you see their actual skill, talent that they've worked years to hone, but it almost seems effortless. It's so demoralizing. But I kept painting. I kept slugging away on these things, and now I'm sharing it. I don't know where I was. Oh yeah. So I don't know why I'm telling you that, and then I'm remembering now. So this brush in my hand is a brush that my wife, who is a legitimate artist and an excellent painter and sculptor and was an art major in college, for real. I stole this brush from her. It's a real canvas brush that I've ruined. And no way. Sean F. Bryan. Hey buddy, thanks for stopping by. And thanks for the compliment, man, on the Vermin Lord. That, that thing I think did come out well, and I appreciate that, Bren, but, that was the best thing I did, and that was at the very end of my initial phase of painting for 5 or 6 years, and then it got stolen. So I can't even look at it now and decry my efforts, but I appreciate the compliment. So, almost done. How's he look? Super blue. So this is a lot less exciting than I was thinking this would be, and I'm sorry about that. But I hope you're jazzed about the idea of hologram man. This would have been smarter to just prime blue. But I think I just wanted to prove everything that I'm doing. So, how's the camera? Is my hand blocking everything? Can you not see that? Is it super annoying? Let me know, and I'll try and adjust it. I've put some videos on YouTube that I didn't do live, that I just kind of recorded and rambled through and didn't have an audience. But the angle on those was different. I was doing it facing me. I was doing it higher. So I've got this tripod now. So if you think the camera angle stinks, let me know. If I'm hard to hear, let me know. If you can hear the music coming out of my headphones, I'm listening to a rad 80s jam, but for copyright reasons, I can't play it out loud. So it's in my headphones. Or if this guy's super boring to paint and you want me to paint something else, I've got a Terminator and I've got another Death Watch guy that I can put together. We can do some modeling together if you want. Let me know. Whoops. Luckily this is old paint. What 80s jam? It's on Pandora. It's a Pandora 80s mix channel. Right now I'm listening to the song Borderline. Thank you. Thank you for the compliment, and thank you for watching another another one of my videos. That's hysterical. All right. I think we got enough blue that I can break out Billy detail and try and get into his little crevices. You can you hear the music? I've been on kind of a 80s kick, mainly because it reminds me of being young. You know what, Brendan? Dan was, can we call him Dan? Good. I'm glad you can't hear the music. Dan was amazing. Just from the kind of the get-go, all his stuff was really high quality. He's still amazing. He's still an amazing painter. So I shouldn't use the word was, but you were. I mean, come on, those. Shit. What was the Eldar? Were they not guardians? The like, the Phoenix Lord and Morgan Ra and all those guys. Those guys were freaking awesome. And your Timberwolves, that paint scheme was awesome. Your vehicles were always. I was always jealous of your ability to paint vehicles, man. I cannot paint vehicles to save my life. I do listen to Rush, Bren. I do. I just have been on this weird 80s kick. I don't know what it is. All right. I'm going to let him dry for a second. And then we'll do some layering on him. So he's a super dark blue right now. So if I were to just throw him in there, he'd look like a statue of a ultramarine. And people would be like, why is there a statue of an ultramarine in there? So the plan is to start deepening the color here. I'm gonna use a blue game ink, and then you know what? I'm gonna start with a black game ink to get the shadows to really be dark, and then I'll work my way to blue and then violet, and then I'll start dry brushing lighter colors on them and maybe come back with the violet. Anyway, so game inks are something that I never ever used until I'd say the last 5 or so years. I didn't know quite what they did or how to use them well, but basically they are, I mean, okay, so that's a lie. I used to just get paint colors that I liked and then dip my brush in water and let the paint drops fall onto the model and then towel them off like I'm doing right now. And that was my ink. I didn't know they actually produced actual like watered down game colors. So we're going to do black on this guy first. I made a mistake kind of putting it all over. This is much darker than I thought it was. So, scratch that. We're not going to use black. A horrible mistake. No, I bought the Stranger Things theme song, Brendan. It's on. I have it. I have the MP3. I purchased it. It was that good. It is in a mix that I gave to my kids to listen to in the car. Yeah, I think it was that show. I totally agree, man. It was Stranger Things combined with that movie, the new It movie, and the show Glow. It just really got me back into the 80s, like in a creative space. So those are definitely, I think, culprits of my desire to hear swank 80s tunes while I do this. Apparently, rumor has it there is a way for me to get a bot, which I think involves me creating a second account and then logging that bot into my chat, and that bot can play an approved playlist from Spotify into my channel, so you'd get like a soundtrack. But I am not smart enough or have the time to figure it out. So you're just going to have to talk to me about 80s music that I'm hearing gently pulsing into my ears from my headphones around my neck. So, what am I doing? I'm repainting over the mistakes I just made on this guy. I used the black ink, I used it everywhere, and then he was much darker than I wanted him to be. So, now he's back to being blue. Fixed. Lesson learned. This is not what I thought it was. So, I'm going to do dark blue game ink. And I'm just going to do the edges. Make the edges pop. Okay, so he's a flat blue now. Going in. So like on his shoulder pads, I'm just going to do the detail around the edge of his shoulder pads. Sorry if my hand's in the way, but I'll show you in a second. So it might be hard to see, but I'm just doing that. So as it dries, it'll really become invisible, but it'll make the creases of his shoulder pads have a little bit more depth. So when I dry brush lighter colors on this, hopefully they'll pop really well. I mean, the light colors will catch the stark edges, but you want some depth in there. The funny thing is, these are such small models, and this is such a small detail. I mean, I'm painting a thing that I'm going to put inside a drop pod. So were I ever to play the game, which is rare, and then I dropped a drop pod, which I've never used before, and it opened up, he would see this guy, and people would be like, what's with the miniature comical space marine? And I'd say, it's a hologram. They're receiving their orders. So I'm just getting in the creases around the edges of the knee pads, the creases of the cape, the emblem of the hilt of his sword, his eyes. Just really trying to get into the dark places to kind of make it look better. Better detail. See you later, Hairman. You're the best. So, he's got some dark blue shadowing in there. That'll dry for a couple minutes. Ink dries super quick, which is sweet. Man, time is flying by. It's almost... Wow. Alright. So, that's done. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to try and move pretty quickly on this guy. Still drying. So, let him dry a little bit more. So, next layer up for him is going to be Hideous Blue. This pot of Hideous Blue is circa 1996, and it's still good. It might have cost me $2.99 20 years ago, but it was worth every penny because it's still freaking good. So, Hideous Blue, you can clearly see right away. It is much lighter than our ultramarine blue friend here. And it's not even ultramarine, I'm painting him in royal blue. Than our royal blue friend. So, dark blue to hideous blue. Do a little dry brushing action on him. See how this looks. I have the same technique and problem with power swords. I try and go from a dark blue to like a white. Just highlighting edges and dropping in ink to catch the shadows. So if this is the worst idea you've ever seen, feel free to let me know. Here we go. So, hideous blue, real light. I picked up this weird habit where I use my thumb as much as anything else to dry off a brush. So, here we go. Really just trying to catch the edges. I guess in essence, if this was really a hologram, it would kind of be bright in the middle and work its way out. But I'm just going to go for classic edging. I do not have the skill to put like a light source in the middle of this guy. But you gotta admit, he's pretty swank. I can't wait to start my night either. You know, Brendan, I thought maybe I would do that a little tonight, but I kind of want to wait so for background, my buddy at work found a file for an Imperial Night Titan. So I got one. I got a printed Night Titan, and it's amazing. And I need to put it together. But this guy who fan created the Night Titan from like pictures of Night Titans, he just modeled his own. Also is now doing like upgrades and stuff on the armor, and he just did a set of the armor to look like Roman centurion, like Roman armor from, you know, your typical Roman legionnaire stuff. So like helmet and shoulder pads and leather strips hanging down, and it looks so amazingly badass that I got to get my friend Francois to print me that out so I can make my knight house or Freeblade knight like this Roman themed dude, and I'm gonna name him Maximus because Gladiator is such a damn good movie. And then he's gonna be kind of like a legionnaire with dark red, bloody maroon, like just a dark red maroon with used bronze gold theme. Like I was staring at this vehicle. Like I've said, I'm not great with vehicles, but I've been staring at this vehicle trying to think of a way to paint it. So I've been afraid to build it because I'm going to have to paint it, and I can't think of a good color scheme, and I'm afraid to paint vehicles. But this armor and the idea of a centurion, like a Roman centurion theme, has really got me inspired. So I haven't started it, but I will. Maybe in future streams I'll definitely be working on it. I didn't, I know I had said I would work on like a bunch of stuff, Deathwatch guys or other models tonight, or maybe work on that night, but I'm just too intimidated by the scope of it to, kind of do it now. And I'm also anxious to get those pieces. So, can you kind of see the highlights now a little bit? How it is darker and kind of like moving dark to light a little closer. I've got my desktop up where I'm kind of using that to tell me where my camera angle is. Let's see. Yeah. So I'm kind of might not seem very good on the camera, but that's the hope. So that's layer 1 of lighter color, a hideous blue. It's at this point that I start to go a little crazy with the way I do this. So I've done a layer of that. I like to go back and do another layer with the ink to really darken the darks and pop the lights. So go back with the ink. Go back with the ink. But yeah, totally the 80s inspires like a hologram feeling. Star Wars, Emperor Palpatine giving you the orders. I saw one awesome model conversion. Somebody had a regular Space Marine, so this Space Marine sized dude, and then he had like a wrist mounted projector, and then they had modeled like a city map floating over his arm, and they painted it like a green, tactical green kind of hologram color, and I was just so in love with it. I was like, oh, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. So I thought I could use this guy in that same fashion, like make a Deathwatch guy or a regular Primaris or a regular Marine with that kind of arm console, and make this guy like talking to him via projector on his arm. But this guy's way too big. I mean, can you imagine this guy projecting out of a Space Marine's arm? It'd be like projecting a second dude, kind of reminiscent of the old Halo. Like, was it Halo? In multiplayer, you could throw a grenade where it had a little clone you, kind of doing your thing so you could run away and distract. So, thanks for hanging out with me, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me, man. Thanks for making a Twitch account and hanging out with me. What else do you want to talk about? Want to talk about how I'm ruining this thing? It's fine. I can take criticism. Want to talk about 40K? Want to talk about how I probably would have joined a secret warrior lodge if I was in the legions during the Great Crusade? Not because I'm into chaos gods or anything, but because I would have been down with the fraternity of within. What do you want to talk about? It's certainly blue. Certainly blue. But that's the whole point, right? Another cool detail. So, as my buddy Francois has been improving his printing abilities, he's gotten smoother and smoother prints. So he printed me this, obviously this drop pod, but also this rhino. And I painted it very poorly because I was kind of doing some experiments on it, but you can kind of see a little bit there were striation lines. So when he was first printing, he was figuring out line depth and everything, and like his original prints, like this rhino leg that he was a throwaway piece that he just gave me, and I painted for terrain. You could definitely see the individual strips of every line, every print line, and you can see it's not smooth at all. So this blue guy has got some of those, but it actually is kind of cool as a hologram because it definitely lends itself to being like a digitally created image. The line, the graininess. I mean, his printing is amazing now. I mean, look at this rhino terrain that he printed. It's broken, it's busted down. Piece of awesome terrain. You can't see any lines really on this guy at all. And it's an amazing piece of terrain. So Francois has gotten amazing with his print jobs, but it just really works on this guy specifically because we're going for like this projected quality. All right, next layer. So I did another layer of ink. Next we're going up to Space Wolf Gray. Space Wolf Gray, kind of a gray blue. The better prints are from him learning better line depth, better control of the printer. It's all the same printer. So he won this printer and had to kind of learn how to use it. He'd never done 3D printing, so he was really excited. The reason he prints stuff for me is because he's excited to print things. He's a maker, like a craftsman, and that's kind of what he enjoys. So he's been printing things for me and learning the machine. He's, nozzle, the tip, how long printing has an effect, longer jobs. So he's like learning the sweet spot of the printer, and it's just getting better and better, and the quality is getting so much better. I mean, at this point now, when he's printing stuff for me for this Titan, like he printed this amazing base, which, I mean, just the detail on it it's gotten so good. It's just gotten so good. I mean, the Aquila on this thing is unreal. The level of detail, broken, like, come on. No lines, nothing. When he first started printing, that eagle would have been ridiculous. They wouldn't even have seen it. Now, it's amazing. Masks for the Titan. I mean, it's just so good. Yeah, it was a combination of just learning the sweet spot of layer depth and supports and how to smartly print things and place them, and then just learning the hardware, learning how to clean it well and calibrate it well, and I am reaping the rewards. So that night is going to be amazing. I mean, it's gonna look amazing. My painting might be a little suspect. So we're doing. So this is Space Wolf Gray, which I don't think they even make anymore. Again, a paint pot from 1996. I can still remember when I bought this and the Shadow Gray and the Hideous Blue, and they were like my favorite 3 colors. Which was the, curious because I was painting Blood Angels at the time, so you'd think I'd be buying reds. Painting red, oh my god, that's another subject for another day. It's like painting black. You'd think these colors, man. I will say this about blue. It is much easier to paint in blue than it is to paint in red, in my opinion. But anyway, I bought these colors back in the 90s, and like every chance I got to put like a blue highlight on my red ultramarine or my red Blood Angels, I was doing it. Computer screens, any kind of digital thing. I was like, that's blue. All they have is old monochrome monitors, and it's just blue. It's all they can project in the year 40,000. I think after I finish this stream and then I push this over to YouTube, I'll take some pictures of this thing with a little bit better light so you can kind of see the end result a little bit better, because I don't think the camera picks up really the detail that I'm seeing very well at all. My projector man. Isn't it funny that I spent like 15 minutes telling you the history of the Death Watch and then painted a hologram? Didn't even paint him. Not even a little bit. Yeah, blues do always cover really well, as opposed to reds and yellows and whites and grays. The good color, the interesting colors, but luckily. Should have painted Ultramarines. Should have started with the Ultramarines. I would have been much happier. Actually, when I shouldn't say I was painting only red Blood Angels, because as Aridin can attest, I got a death company who was primarily black. I painted them, and then I was like, wait, maybe my Blood Angels are a chapter within the Blood Angel organization that's primarily black. So from that point on, the armor scheme I was doing was like base black with red Blood Angel stuff. It's such a cop-out. I can remember distinctly, like the end of high school or something, our other friend being like, all you do is paint black. You paint black, you dry brush details, and you call it done. And I was like, well, that's true. I can't argue that. He's starting to look pretty cool, but hard to see. Ultramarines were super lame back in the day. Man, I totally agree. I was saying that at the beginning. I think they were always pushed as like this generic vanilla Space Marine, and they didn't have the cool like traits like, I mean, even the Salamanders had a terrible name, but at least they were like modeled after, dragons. But yeah, I agree. The Ultramarines are much cooler. The good authors getting their hands on the license and writing amazing novels has definitely breathed life into the Ultramarines that their terribly named Primarch and their backstory didn't give me before. So we've done a couple of layers here. So that was our, fourth layer? So again, I'm going to go back, try and get into the creases again. But can you see it? I'm sorry the camera's so bad. you know what? Next time I do this, if you guys join again, if you're willing to tough one of these out with me again, you should paint with me. Bring your own stuff. Tell me what you're painting. We'll talk about it. We'll talk lore. We'll talk whatever. Doesn't have to be just 40k stuff too. We can talk about whatever sci-fi universe or nerdy thing you want to talk about. Because God knows nobody else in my house wants to talk about this stuff with me except for my sons, who I completely sucker into it. Speaking of my sons, so my this other Death Watch guy I have. So you might think, why did I just paint blue ink on top of his dry brushed head? But I do that so that the lighter blues start to bleed through. So I'll go back again and I'll dry brush, but really to catch dark shadows and then make the highlights pop. Weird again. My electrical process is super weird. And like I said, I'm not a professional. But anyway, my oldest son, Nate, because the new shorter game Kill Team came out, and I bought the rule book, and he's been watching me paint and stuff, and been asking me questions, and he really wants to be a part of this stream. But anyway, maybe he will next time. But I made him read the book, the rule book, and then read all the factions and stuff, and choose based on the information in the book. And then he'd ask me questions, and then we looked up images of successor chapters and stuff, and he did a lot of research on what he wanted to play. But anyway, he ended up choosing a successor chapter called the Paladins of Dorn, which are an Imperial Fist successor chapter. What do I mean by successor chapter? That's a great question. So, like I said, originally there were legions, and then after the heresy, which is another long story, the Primarch of the Ultramarine was like, I've got an idea. We can never let the Space Marine legions have this much power again, so we'll break all the legions, all these 100,000 man legions, into what's called chapters, which there are many chapters, and I think each chapter can only have 1,000 dudes in it, and that'll be, much less power in one place, so humanity will be safer. And so the successor chapters, so the Ultramarines and the Iron, or the Imperial Fist and the Space Wolves, they all broke into successor chapters, and then they all got cool names and cool backstories and all this. So my son chose the Paladins of Dorn. So if you know anything about the Imperial Fist, they're all yellow. Just yellow, and I've never wanted to paint them. I've never been interested in the yellow. I like them as characters. They're like the Ultramarines, another group of Space Marines who've become much cooler because of the novelizations, but I've never wanted to paint them because painting yellow is ridiculously hard. But anyway, the Paladins of Dorn are silver, bright silver with gold trim. They look like knights. I mean, hence the whole paladin thing. So I bought him some models, and we're going to start painting together, which is amazing. And then we're going to play Kill Team together, which is amazing. I mean, just think about it. So what do you guys think? How does the hologram look so far? Should I keep going lighter? Should I break out some white? How does it look in there? Do you get the idea? Do you see where I'm going? What do you think? Comment. Give me some comments. Give me some feedback. Can you see what I'm trying to do? Let me move the light. Maybe I should paint some blue shadow on the base of the... Yeah, I think some white's a good idea. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's give him some ultimate... Dude, your suggestions are totally valid. You have eyes, right? When I try and paint, I want it to look cool and look like a thing and not like a toy that I painted. Like, I want it to look like a thing. So... You've got a suggestion for me? I'm taking it. So let's go for white. How about we do some white dry brush on the real edges, and then we'll do another round of ink, but I'll use violet. See if I can't, or maybe the blue again, so I'll still have some left over. Alright, we're going to do some white. Some white highlighting. If you don't paint it, I mean, are you interested in Warhammer? Or do you know anything about the lore? Lore. Lore. The lore? Are you interested in the video games? Because Dawn of War was badass. Space Marine was badass. The video games made by Relic are exactly what I wanted my 40K digital experience to be. Oh, there's another great game. I think it was by... It was a THQ studio. Got shut down right after they released it, but it was called Kill Team. It was a third-person dungeon crawler game where you were a kill team. Multiplayer couch co-op. Going through an orc spaceship. That was a great game. Yeah, painting is not a direct thing. Oftentimes, it's layers and trick techniques that you just that were somebody to actually tell you how to do them. It would make a lot of sense. Like I just kind of bumbled my way into this way I do it, but a lot of the skills or techniques I use are stuff that Aridin taught me. Because, man, like I've said, he is a fantastic painter. I would watch his live stream. So, but I agree. You should pay more Space Marine. Man, Mark Strong as the voice of that Space Marine character was spot on. He is the voice of Space Marines in my head. If not, if you have the opportunity to pick up any audiobooks, if you like audiobooks, you pick up any audiobook written by Aaron Dembski-Bowden, Dan Abnett, Graham McNeil, Nick Kime, and read by Jonathan Keeble, because that guy is an amazing audiobook reader, and his voices of the Space Marines are Space Marines in my head now. So definitely, and he gives cultural characterizations to each different legion or chapter representative, and they're always freaking amazing. So if you have an opportunity, Jonathan Keeble, man, look him up on Audible, and any 40K stuff that he reads is bound to be amazing. I actually just found his reading of a trilogy by Bernard Cornwell about King Arthur, which is my favorite trilogy that I read many, many years ago, but I'm re-listening to them, read by Jonathan Keeble, and man, he's really bringing that universe to life for me with the accents and the characterizations he does. So I added some white. What do you think? Look not much different. Go back and do a last layer of ink. If you're curious, I found this Army Painter brand Hobby Precise Detail brush. It's not the smallest brush I have, but it is, interestingly enough, the most precise brush I have because I know exactly where the paint's going to fall. I've had it for a few years, and I never want to use another brush. But the sad thing is I've tried to order new ones, and they're different. They're not the same. And the last one I ordered came from Amazon. The bristles were broken. So I hope I never ruin this brush. Sorry if I don't look up and see your comments or I react late to them. Also sorry if you can't see because of my hand. He is so blue. This dude is blue. His cape looks pretty cool. Capes and cloaks are another thing that I've not been super fond of painting because they're just too much surface area. You're my boy. Excellent quote. 10 points to Gryffindor. Excellent quote. I haven't seen that movie Old School in a long time. I was actually watching Role Models before I started streaming. Another great movie. But Role Models is like the same kind of, in my mind, like same kind of like error comedy movie. Like the comedy movie that starred 2 or 3 particularly well-known comedians in the like Saturday Night Live style movie. You're my boy, Blue. You're my boy, Blue. Never forget. Dust in the Wind, another great tune in that movie. Oh man, I think my 80s stream turned off. Ken, I think you should start painting. Don't be coy. I love that you're hanging out with me, man. Oh, you know what, Ken? You know what would be good to talk about since you're here? Let's talk about friggin' Harry Dresden. Dresden Files. One of the greatest book series ever freaking written. Stalled out. I'm all caught up. 15 books and ancillary side books and still waiting. Peace talks. I'm so disappointed that he stalled. Butcher was cranking those out once a year. Oh, and I listened to most of them on audiobook, and man, James Marsden's the guy who played Spike in Buffy. I never watched Buffy, but that's his, I think, his acting claim to fame. He reads it, and man, he kills it. He kills it as Dresden. He kills all the characters. Audiobooks have really helped me enjoy stuff that I had a hard time. Pat Noonan, welcome to the party. I was just thinking about wrapping up. What do you think of my hologram dude? So blue. So can you see him? Move the light down. Give a little bit more dramatic, stark lighting. James Marsters, yeah. He crushes it. Crushes it. So, how does he look? Hologrammy. Am I getting the point across? Does he look like a swank hologram in there? Right. James, yeah. Yes, not to confuse Cyclops with Spike. Yeah, you do. Brendan, grab them and listen to them. They're amazing. You started reading Dresden, didn't you? Definitely listen to them if you can, if you got the time. All right, I think I'm going to wrap it up because I'm pretty sure my wife wants to go to bed because I've hijacked our bedroom for the last 50 or hour and 10 minutes. So I promise you next time I'll paint something less blue and or I'll model something. If you want me to paint something specific, comment or send me a message in here or email or something and I'll paint it. But as it is right now, just got a little inspiration to do this bad boy. And I think he looks pretty swank. Might even get a badass blue light from the Grim Dark Lights and try and light them up. You want to paint my face? Paint it. Paint your face. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm gonna go and pee and let my wife go to bed, and I really hope that you guys had fun, and I had fun, kind of rambling. Thanks, Ken. It was really great hanging out. I mean, I feel like we kind of hung out. Come back next time. So I'll end it. Thanks, everybody. I don't have a good end. How about this dragon? This dragon will be the end. Rah, rah, goodbye, everyone. Come back next time. Hang out with a dragon. Okay. Bye. Rah, rah, rah. I painted this dragon. Bye, everybody.